And we are live.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. It's V, the Guerrilla Economist, and you are listening to us live. And it's time to hang with Harley. And Harley Schlanger is somebody who needs no introduction. He is the voice of reason in this tumultuous time, in this crazy mixed up world. So without further ado, Harley, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you, V?
I'm doing good, Harley. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. We've seen that the whole entire Russia gate is again backfiring, and it's egg on the face of the establishment. Russia gate is more Israel gate than anything else, it seems like. Al Franken resigned, so someone like you were saying before, probably more unfunnier than him, will probably be taking over the reins over at his Senate seat in the liberal state of Minnesota. Where do you want to begin? There's so many things going on. ISIS is officially dead. The Russians have announced that it's really mission accomplished, unlike George W. Bush, flying in on an aircraft carrier, just announcing it lackadaisically. So there's so many great things going on, so many interesting things. There's intrigue. There's a litany of things to talk about. So take your pick, Harley.
Let's start with the guy whose name has a lot of consonants, but it's apparently pronounced Strzok.
Yes.
This tells you all you need to know about Russiagate. This is a guy who was the #2 in the counterintelligence division of the FBI, considered an expert on Russia. Now, what he's an expert on is trying to get rid of Trump and supporting Hillary, as we now know from the soon-to-be-released SMS messages to his girlfriend, mistress, whatever. I thought in the FBI you weren't allowed to do that kind of thing. So it's a wonder that he's still serving there. But look, what he intersects, the Hillary email investigation. He was one of the people who did the final interview with Hillary, or maybe the only interview with Hillary. She wasn't under oath. It was an interview which allowed Comey to exonerate her. This guy Strzok was the one who changed from gross negligence to some, carelessness, basically letting Hillary off the hook. At the same time, he was on the inside in the group that was reading the dossier filed by Fusion GPS and British intelligence on Trump and preparing Russiagate. Then he went from that into the Russiagate task force. But before he was brought into the Russiagate task force, he was the FBI agent who oversaw the interrogation of Flynn. And what was done with Flynn was an atrocity. They basically said, we've got a few questions for you. And they were operating off a transcript they had from the surveillance of the Russian ambassador. So they already knew what Flynn had said to him. And as they asked questions, they were leading Flynn in a direction where Flynn probably wasn't expecting that this was being tested against a transcript and said a few things that were sloppy. Next thing you know, he's forced to plead guilty to lying. Now, the whole upshot of this thing is, once again, the overused term of nothing burger. This is a less than nothing burger. What it shows is, again, that Mueller has nothing. To get two people on lying to the FBI, virtually any time you talk to the FBI, these guys are going to nail you for lying, even when you're telling the truth. And what does this have to do with the Russian collusion issue? I think the most important thing is that someone has to come out and say, what was Flynn trying to do? He was trying to prevent the United States from ending up in war with Russia, which was the intention of Obama's escalating sanctions against Russia on the way out the door. So you have Obama, Hillary, the deep state apparatus, and the British intelligence networks around Christopher Steele and GCHQ out to destroy Trump. Why? Because he was working with Putin? No. Because he was being blackmailed by Putin? No. Because he was trying to change the policy that the globalists had imposed in the United States of a permanent war mobilization in the Middle East, a permanent war on terrorism that was really a war against the American people, a policy of permanent bailouts and permanent austerity. That's what Trump was moving to break. And instead of accepting the verdict of the American people who elected him president, they decided to overturn it. And I don't particularly like KT McPoint. In an email at the time, she said Obama's sanctions were designed to uh, discredit Trump's victory, to box him in, and to provoke him into saying something in defense of Russia that they could use against him. And she's absolutely right about that. Now, if people process this, if they're really looking at what this shows a very small group of people conspired to overturn the will of the American people, as expressed in the election process. That's the obstruction of justice. That's the corruption. And I wish that someone could get Trump, instead of tweeting, to hold a press conference and just lay this whole thing out. Who Comey is, who Mueller is. You know, the other thing about Strzok, which I just picked up somewhere from an intelligence briefing that one of my associates put together. At #2 guy in counterintelligence at the FBI, you know who he was the liaison to? John Brennan at the CIA. So it's a tight-knit little circle of anti-American criminals who need to be brought on trial. And that's what Russiagate is.
Right, absolutely. You know, it's amazing to me that this is all they have. This is all they have. I mean, Alan Dershowitz was basically taking the whip to the CNN cronies and literally asking the question point blank, where's the crime? When CNN Anderson Pooper was hyperventilating, talking about Russia collusion, and Dershowitz like, what collusion? Show me the crime. Show me where the law was broken. And not a single one of them could produce anything.
Well, and still we're now, after the alleged hacking of the DNC computers, and there's still no evidence. Have is the assertion of the three main intelligence agencies who are known for being liars, their assertion that they know it happened, as opposed to someone who's actually qualified, like Bill Binney, who said that it wasn't a hack, it was an inside leak. So in the meantime, look, there's so many potentially damaging things that can happen if you have the United States in this kind of constitutional crisis. We just saw something this week. You were talking about Israel Gate, the decision by Trump to go ahead and move the capital of, or have the United States acknowledge that the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. This is designed to explode things. It's designed to further the Israeli-Saudi war faction, even though the Saudis are going to protest that. At the same time, the Saudis are working with the Israelis. The Israelis are attacking inside Syria now to go after Hezbollah. If they had any competent military people, they already would have done it. So by not having Trump with his hands free and his head free to actually look at what the neocons are doing to thwart good intentions, we still are in the risk of a confrontation and even a war. You have the chaos in the United Kingdom. You have in Germany no government, no real prospect for a government. You know, no one's exactly excited about the idea of Martin Schulz embracing Angela Merkel. You know, you talk about your predators or predators. Now, in the meantime, China is growing. Even the cynics in the investment departments of major banks are forced to admit that the Chinese economy is continuing to experience real growth.
Right.
Not inflationary growth, but real growth. So the obvious point that we've been making over the last months is that there is an alternative to a collapsing Western financial system, an alternative to the dysfunctional so-called two-party system in the United States. And the sooner we clear away the Mueller investigation, we can begin to move towards some kind of competent direction for the United States. But if we don't do it, we are facing the danger of another blowout.
Yeah, we are. We are. Harley, what's your take on as this year is coming to an end? December's winding down. What do you see as some of the major issues that are facing us?
Well, the obvious one we've been talking about, the so-called Russiagate, but what's beyond that? We have not had a competent economic policy in this country for quite a while. And this tax bill, from what you can see of it, is not a solution. The attempt to roll back the wrong part of Dodd-Frank is not a solution. That's being pursued by the Republicans in Congress is not going to solve anything. You want to deal with Dodd-Frank? Repeal the whole damn thing and put in Glass-Steagall. That's the way you could deal with the bankruptcy in the financial system. We haven't gotten rid of Obamacare. It's another disaster that's going to explode sooner or later. In some states, it's already exploded. There's one or no options. If the mandate is gone, the so-called poor people who were brought into with subsidies to buy worthless insurance, nothing. Although I think for many people, Obamacare is just as bad as nothing. So I think on the economic side, we're also seeing the growth of debt. The so-called robust Christmas sales almost entirely financed by credit card debt, at a point where credit card debt is one of the fastest.
Harley, do we lose him?
Yeah, I think Harley, if you can hear us, we dropped your audio.
Your audio dropped out.
Okay.
You said credit card debt is one of the fastest. That's where you dropped.
Fastest growing categories of debt, and it's just going to increase with the Christmas season. People are buying things that are going to break and that they don't need on debt they can't pay back, and that's not a recovery. The stock market, cheering on the stock market is like cheering on an out of control speeding train headed toward a cliff. So we've got to bring these things under control. And if we do it, look, there's a potentially good future. The Belt and Road is moving. Trump is continuing to make the right kind of talks with Xi Jinping and the Chinese. Helga Zepp-LaRouche was just a keynote speaker at a conference in Guangdong province on the Maritime Silk Road, and she had a very tremendous reception. And she said she got to see the bridge, the sea bridge that's being built in Guangdong province, which is one of the longest bridges in the world, that they built in 8 years, as opposed to the bridge in Wiesbaden, Germany, which supposedly in the advanced sector, which is taking about 8 years to build a one-lane highway.
Right.
We're seeing these kinds of differences between a growing economy, which is built on optimism and win-win approach. Make as much money as you can before the bubble pops, which is essentially the Western financial system.
Exactly. Very well said. Harley, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's always been a pleasure. It's always a great, refreshing, and insightful time that we have with you. How can people follow your work? If you can plug your website again, sir?
Yeah, people can go to LaRouchePAC.com. That's LaRouchePAC.com. And I'm writing an article right now on an update on what I presented at the beginning of this program on the Mueller investigation. If people would like to get that article, they can just send me an email to harleysch@gmail.com. That's HARLEYSCH@gmail.com. I've had a number of very good dialogues with some of your listeners who are very interested and also very insightful in some of their comments. So I welcome that kind of dialogue with the Rogue Money audience.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on, Harley. And folks, again, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you will be alerted to the next time that Harley is on with us to share his viewpoints as well as his work. With that being said, we're over and out. Take it away, CJ.